Well, morning, fellow zombies. Are we alive yet? Are we awake yet? Are you emotionally screwed up or sleep deprived just yet? I sure as hell am. I only had a few hours of sleep. It's 3:56 in the morning Pacific Standard Time. It is the 6th of June, 2023, the Weaver John here, Roseman, California, which would be me. What's going on, guys? Alright. Coming across more and more news articles, and sometimes that's the I was staying on the national front on this one. But sometimes the national front just doesn't pick up enough. Montana passing the first ever government sponsored bill of either protecting or banning free speech, no matter how you look at the damn thing. It's bad enough when you have to hear arguments about programs that may be or may not be communist in nature and controlling our thought patterns when we actually have communities, local communities, fighting it off in council meetings regarding library book banning. Certain books in the library being banned left and right because they contain, oh my god, obscene language and pictures and everything else in there. But we use a computer program and the kids are having fun with it. And they're learning more and more interesting things. But now you got the adults saying, "Oh no, you can't use this thing because it's too dangerous for us to understand. It's communist." Okay, there had been congressional hearings trying to determine the nature of certain social media outlets, whether or not if they are communist or not. That would be including the electronic frontier known as TikTok. Adults, from the kids, from the teenagers to the adults, using this program to express themselves. Twitter used to be that kind of domain until it went nuts. Elon Musk wanted it opened up to every conspiracy nut job out there and call it freedom of speech. And while I applaud the idea of having freedom of speech, just having it for conspiracy nut jobs only and anybody else responsible for quote unquote legitimate news, that's a problem. But it is a company controlling that information. Much like we have companies controlling the media of the information that we see and respond to. So we have to have other alternative options necessary, private companies as they are, because if they are government sponsored, government sanctioned, then we are limited to what the government says. We are limited to what the elected officials that we put into office are allowing us to think and feel and everything else. That's why corporations for public broadcasting have to be away from rules and regulations, but they are subject to public donations, even though they do get private donations from corporate media or from other media sources, or even from foundations to support. But what about the major news organizations? Well, advertisers are usually ad driven and they're governed by economics and by business and by supply and demand and not by regulations to a point though. Unless of course we're dealing with the government system trying to tell media how to function. And in the form of TikTok, you're dealing with a private company and a private entity that other government officials are still having an issue with. White House is still not quite sure whether or not if the TikTok is a good thing or not. A lot of kids use it. They're afraid of what they call the metadata. various information coming off off the company websites, storing up favorites and anything else that they can, probably for marketing, and other people think it's for espionage and nefarious reasons. They freak out. Well, we do the same damn thing when it comes down for radio. We do the same damn thing for telecommunications, for FaceTime. We also do it for a lot of our phone apps that we use, not to mention the old time, not corporate media, but business. Private businesses and entities. Those social media platforms that we've used for communications for decades now, since the 80s. You ever heard of the bulletin boards? BBSs out there? We had the internet starting up like crazy. We had these Usenets. Wild, free internet where anybody can say or do anything, including passing along codes how to run programs one way or another. Even hackers have a hack fest on that and use the Usenet actually, for their own reasons. But we blame the media today about it. We blame anything and everything about it. When I was going to be raising up a point, I was concerning about a government entity, such as a state government, such as a state governor signing a bill in telling the people, you can't use this platform. We told you so. And if you do it, we blame the other guy. Actually, we blame the media company that you're using. Excuse me. You're using this particular program over here, and we don't want you to do it anymore. Why not? Because it's bad. How? How dare you challenge this bill? I'll challenge it. If I had enough room on my phone, I'll probably use TikTok, but I haven't got enough room on the phone. I only got a certain amount of storage space in the damn thing. I can't afford to get anything else. Must be nice to afford 10 gig or something like that. I only got about maybe 4 or 5 if I'm lucky. Just 1 or 2 just to keep using, and the rest of them are phone hogs. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I started using this damn thing several years ago, a different form or not. And there's a lot of forms and functions that I probably use and don't use, but I still have hanging around because I still have need of them. And the others are just automatic and hanging around a bit. I mean, I have to keep popping in and out of phone apps that I still need to use on this phone. Medical, password driven, Facebook, public. No, it's a private domain, but internationally known and used. CNN for a news source. ABC, Los Angeles. Minor things like what they call calc tape. Calculator. Hell of a way to do your finances on this damn thing, I'll tell you that much. Of course, then you got Pay Range. What's Pay Range? Pay Range is one of those companies out there that if you happen to get range with one of them, you can actually use their services. Over at Antelope Valley College, they've got food vending machines all over the place. They have a phone app that you use called Pay Range. You plug in the amount of money coming from your bank account into this damn thing. And then you could, after you fill it up with funding on the damn thing, you can pay to get a snack, to get a liquid, to get food. You can also go using it for laundry or whatever services that they have. Completely accessible and open season for hackers. I don't know, some things may be or may not be needed or wanted anyway. Weather Channel, is that needed? I mean, we need to find out what the hell weather's going to be. We need to know whether or not we're going to be freezing or cooking our asses off at this point over here. Or how about Office apps out there that actually allow to write letters using voice speech and also type out like crazy on here. I'm still working on the typing. Or even YouTube. YouTube! Another private corporate entity owned by Google. And they would allow me to edit my own videos if I need to. Put them on, take them off, put interesting stuff on there. So these are some of the stuff that I use on a constant basis at this point over here, and they eat up a hell of a lot. So does Facebook. I mean, Facebook is the major, because every time they have something new coming on Facebook, it takes up more and more room, and I have to keep busting it back down to basics here. So I'm stuck with what limited information, limited stuff I can do on a phone. It's a very old phone. Back then, its time when I first got it, it was cool, upgraded, no problem. Now it's a dinosaur, but a useful tool that still works. Much like we use social media. Now, there had been rules and regulations being passed and challenged in the courts concerning about social media. All people got to do is research the damn shit with the SCOTUS. Do a search in a law firm in the law schools, and they'll be able to explain it to you one way or another. They tried to ban, and they're having issues. Other countries are having issues with Facebook and YouTube at times, not to mention Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. They don't like them. They don't want them. Why? People think that when you're using a corporate entity to get your word out, you have the freedom of speech for it. And people keep forgetting. Freedom of speech works only if you're going head to head with the government. You got to say your mind. You got to say your piece, even to the elected officials that you just put in office. And there's also trying to put a zipper on your mouth. You got the right to say if you don't like them, if you don't like what they're doing. You got the right to put up a thumb if you think they're doing it right, or be like those Roman emperors out there. Of course, their connotation of what it means back then is different to what we mean these days. Back then in imperial days, the emperor would look upon the people in a coliseum, and if he was going to be judging them in that coliseum, would they live or would they die? Well, does the people want them to live? Maybe he'll do that. But if he's got to burp his ass, well, you're in trouble, aren't you? How is it different from today? We got our laws doing the same damn thing. Either or this or this. We have a Montana government put up a state legislature, passed and signed by the state governor, declaring that a private entity and a private corporation is no longer valid for people. They can't use it. They don't want people using it. Get off of it because we say so. Because the people had spoken. No, actually, the fucking idiots who got the damn thing in there are terrified as hell because they're afraid of government secrets might be used. Who in their right mind's going to be using TikTok to go through the damn government bases over here, show the shit to people left and right on TikTok? Hell, you could do that on anything else. You're going to be banning everything else going on? Or how about if you're using TikTok to get the word out saying that we don't like this government, we don't like this governor, we don't like what's happening. We're going to get a party to go against this particular person over here. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they banned TikTok. And conservatives out there are doing the same damn shit. We don't want this because it's different. because it's going against what we want them to think about. We got to protect the children. No, you're protecting your own damn pocketbook. That's what you're doing, you schmuck. Give me a break with the damn children. The children are not more hip than you are. You know, biddies. I'm 57 years old. I'm an old fart, and I can admit it. But I'm not going to force somebody else to use or not to use. I'm a guy that likes free speech. I'm a guy that likes the First Amendment. But I understand that there are limits. There are limits. And the forums that I would choose to use on a constant basis over here, I know they grant me permission. And there's only so much lateral room I can maneuver in here that I am allowed by the corporate CEOs, by the shareholders, and by the head honcho, whatever, who's in charge of the whole damn thing. They're allowing me the space to do what I need to do, which what I'm doing is communicating. I'm using my freedom of speech, my bill right there, the first one. Then for me, it's the only one. Because the power of speech is just as powerful as number two. Number two will kill you physically. But how do you kill the idea? Is you use number one. Or to create a new idea, you still use number one. But you need a platform to get your viewpoint across. Now, if it was a government sponsored, you'd be subjugated under rules and regulations of the government. But there isn't a government internet sponsored program out there for us to use. Otherwise, we'd be subject. This is a private entity we're talking about here. This is a private entity curtailing or being curtailed by a state government, by government, saying to you, you have no right to function. Now, I understand if they got business licenses, I can understand about that thing, but they're telling people not to use it. Isn't it up to the private corporation at this point over here to make that kind of distinction? And isn't there a problem concerning about our private corporations out there being ruled and regulated by the government itself? See, there are federal laws out there, even made by judicial review. If people just actually understood what the damn thing was in the first place and be able to research it. You can go into different websites, different law reviews, type in the issues. They'll get the answers. It's called research. I'm not doing it for you. You guys do it yourself. You guys want to find out? Find out. Find your own little rabbit hole and see where it goes. But I'll tell you one thing, this particular rabbit hole will lead you to the answers. There are law schools out there that keep track of the federal government, that keeps track of the federal court cases coming out of SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States. Oh, right now is a joke right now. Depending upon which particular viewpoint you're looking at it at. If you're extremely conservative, well, then they're voting your way, isn't it? If you're liberal-minded, well, then you've got an issue then. That's going to be lasting for decades and for generations to come, all those decisions, until we get those damn things reversed. by changing the justices around one way or another. And that takes the act of Congress. And speaking of act of Congress, they're the ones acting the laws necessary to make those kind of changes. And to see whether or not we've actually got control over a private and corporate entity. The corporate entity that gives limitations to First Amendment rights for people to use it to express themselves. But there is no corporate regulations against them because of the Supreme Court rulings out there that made it possible for the corporates to be not subjugated. Even a FCC had issues concerning about the ham radio operators and CB radio operators out there. When we had those radios out there in the 60s and 70s, you had truckers using it all the damn time. They still do. But they use different methods of communication now. Better ones. But out there, it was a wild and free Radio Land out there. They made up their own codes. They actually use 10 codes. And some of those 10 codes are actually the ones that they keep using to tell their fellow travelers out there what was going on out there. And they had to be FCC. They had to be federally regulated. There were public airwaves allowed by the government. That's one thing. When the government gives you that, there's always a string attached to it. You have a specially modified radio device here, able to transmit stuffing. Well, we have the electronic airwaves we were giving to you, but to a point. Here's the rules and regulations that you're allowed to use it. But you're free to use it. But you're going to be governed by it. That the government had allowed the airwaves to be given out when you're using radio. Walkie-talkies don't have that problem because they have a limited range, but you're talking about a CB, citizen band radio, or maybe specially modified radio on that one, where you can transmit for miles and miles, so you get it bouncing from repeater station to repeater station. Carry the signal forward. Even ham operators do the same damn shit. They bounce the signals off the ionosphere of the Earth to different places left and right. But even they're subject to regulations. Because they are given the air regulations by the so-called government. Well, I can't say the so-called government, but it is by the Federal Communication Commission. Federal government. With stipulations. What you can and can't use. Keep that in mind. Government grant comes stipulations. You're not given a freebie. You're given stipulations. But if you use it for your advantage, okay. You're given a grant of using your freedom of speech against a government entity when you disagree with it. You're allowed to do that. But you can't go into a movie theater and scream, "Fire! There's a fire in the screen!" Of course, you might scare the hell out of people when they actually hear the word fire and not hear the rest of the context. It's the only thing we're judging it on is that initial response, that initial shock and awe there. But we are talking about a private entity being regulated by a state. An entity that promotes freedom of speech, or a limited version of freedom of speech. This has to be a federal case. The problem is the conservative court is not going to touch it. Because I'll probably agree with Montana and states like them to limit that, which is already the slippery slope. We've already been losing that battle already. We've already been losing that battle. Now, there have been other people over there saying that we are not, or are we in a civil war? And I think we are. Well, we took for granted is now we're going to have to fight for it one way or another. And we have to fight it in a legal way. We have to fight it in the courts. But we also have to get the law enforcement, actually the lawmakers. And I'm not talking about county, and I'm not talking about local jurisdiction. I'm talking about state and federal. I'm talking about if you're going to have a state legislator tell you that you can't use Facebook, you can't use TikTok, you can't use Instagram, you can't use any of those things because we say so. Because we enacted a law that prevents you from using it. From communicating with people left and right, using a corporate entity for that one. Finding some way to circumnavigate the First Amendment. Now, if any smart liberal lawyer out there would hanker on this one, who understands the First Amendment rights in any way, shape, or form, you know that the government can't curtail people's freedom of speech. Is this one of those situations? I'm asking the ACLU on this one. They know that they've got a Supreme Court decision out there, and they know they don't like the current lineup we've got in the Supreme Court right now. They have to take it through the lower courts first to get the precedents going and get a history going so they can make the case and make the arguments. They have to find the precedents in the legal history if they want to fight for the First Amendment rights on this one. And I'm asking the ACLU to do that. Because eventually they're going to get you guys knocked out. There's going to be no more ACLU. My thought, my feeling, I'm looking at patterns and trends in my head on this one. I'm not trying to spout off any conspiracy nut job stuff out there. I've heard them. They're being posted out there by the progressive media on YouTube a lot. And unfortunately, YouTube right now has got it locked in with the zeros and ones targeting me, saying, well, since you like your preferences this way, we got you locked into this damn thing. So this is a kind of vile crap I'm still getting these days. I'm still trying to get out of it. And that's a private corporate entity right there for you. But I'm still allowed, for freedom of speech, I'm still allowed to put my voice and my opinions out there. I'm still allowed that by a corporate entity. And somehow the First Amendment is still trying to apply one way or another. Even though we're dealing with a private entity, it's still up to Congress. It's still up to the House of Representatives and the United States Senate to pass the laws, if necessary, to protect our freedom of speech, even with corporate entities being involved. And we have to look at the corporate entities as corporate entities, not just as a private person. But there's the catch. There's the catch. Once we look at corporate entities as corporate entities subject to rules and regulations, the government has got them. In order to use a radio, you need rules and regulations. In order for the media to keep broadcasting on airwaves, they need the rules and regulations. They have to be viewed as such. Where's the difference between the internet service providers and the media that we have right now? Think on this.